Hey folks, it is June 19, Friday, and this is the Daily Word in the Crisis once more. I've been saying from the start of this thing that we're going to see a tectonic shift in the church in the days to come as this coronavirus panic with its shutdowns and its closures eases up. Well, today I want to give just a hint of what one aspect of that shift will look like. In John 4, Jesus was passing through Samaria, and at about noon, in the heat of the day, he was tired, he was thirsty, he was resting by a well when a woman came to draw water. Jesus asked for a drink and sparked a conversation about worship. So John 4, verse 23, "An hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For such people the Father seeks to be his worshipers. God is spirit," verse 24, "God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." Well, for most of my life, I've heard and I've believed and I've preached sermons that said that to worship in spirit and truth is to worship from the heart. And that's true. It's to be honest in it, to mean it. As far as it goes, that's true. To be honest in it, to mean it, to be fully engaged. But we've believed it like it has, well, how do I put it? It has to do with what's inside of me and my attitudes and feelings. That's what I've been taught. And those things matter, obviously. Obviously, it's important that our hearts be right. Obviously, it's important that we worship from the heart and that we mean it, but that's not the context, really, of these verses. And because it's not the context, then it's not the real point that Jesus was making. The context of what Jesus was saying to the woman at the well is about knowing God. Who is he? What is he really like? Knowing God. Verse 42 says, "You worship what you do not know." Well, that's the heart of the discussion with the Samaritan woman at the well. When you really know somebody, just in human terms, when you really know somebody, connection, there's a oneness at some level, like Beth and me, my wife, after nearly 48 years of marriage, sensing one another, even across thousands of miles. I know who Beth is. She knows who I am. There are no real walls between us. We're not perfect, but we can rejoice in one another because we have a revelation of who one another really are. The blessing begins with the fact that she knows me. Well, God longs for that with us. He's a person. He wants to be known. Worship can never be allowed to be just an entertainment event. It can't be about feeding ourselves. It has to be about knowing God and God knowing us. In spirit and in truth is to perceive all that God is and then to worship him for all that he is, for his sake, to bless him. It's to connect with the fullness, the full revelation. It's to see him. It's to know him. It's to get him, understand him, to see into his heart. That's why he says the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. Excuse me. For such people, the Father seeks to be his worshipers. And so God seeks us. That's his initiative. He's calling us in love to be worshipers who truly know him, to be people who realize what he's really like and who can connect with who he is at the deepest level of their spirit. He longs to be known. As human beings, some of the deepest wounds come to us when you're not known for who you really are, and you're labeled as something else. I know how that feels. It's done to me all the time. People have been mislabeling God for thousands of years. Throughout the ages, people have missed who and what he really is, and because he's a person, that hurts. I wonder how much of the church has been worshiping from the heart, but not really in spirit and truth, because we've missed God's true nature. Can we be sure, each of us, of what we're actually worshiping? Why are we here? Is it the music? Is it the people? Is it the entertainment? What moves us? Is it that we really know and perceive him? Is it that we bless him by knowing him and recognizing who he is? Is it that we perceive and worship the reality and that we're growing in it and we're moving past whatever might hinder our perception of his reality in a way that blesses him? Are we giving him that gift? Or are we here primarily for our own benefit? Right now, in a lot of places around the nation and the world, a remnant is rising up with a purified hunger and a passion for the reality and the fullness of who it is that we have come to worship and serve and love. It's not in the ritual. It's not in the hype. It's not a hunger for demonstrations of power. It's not a desire for anything self-centered. It's not a bless me club. The rising remnant is sick and tired of all that because it's not enough. They know there's something more than 3 songs, a nice sermon, and out in an hour. They might not really know just what that more is, but they know it's out there. 3 hymns and a nice sermon was, when I was growing up, 3 hymns and a nice sermon, that was the state of the church. About the time the Jesus movement exploded in the early 70s, that was the state of the church. And as that revival took hold, we couldn't get enough of worship. We never would have stood for what has become the paradigm now in most churches today. It's almost like we've turned the clock back 30 or 40 years and we're doing what our forebears did that we changed when the Jesus movement came. We're back there again. We've lost something precious. But the remnant knows. At root, the remnant carries a pure desire to know and to bless Jesus. They hunger for the genuine. They hunger for the real. They want the depth. They want to encounter God for his sake. They want to really know him. In biblical terms, to know something is to be able either to do it or to experience it. 2 or 3 years ago, I wrote a worship song, and I've written a lot of worship songs, but this particular one of the lyric lines goes, I want to know you. I want to see you. I want to bless you in all things that I do. True worshipers will know him. They will know him deeply. And in that knowing, they'll have a greater and growing understanding of who he is. They'll have a bigger picture. And that bigger picture will determine the shape of their worship. It'll determine what they offer and how they offer it. In real worship, we encounter the truth of who he is. We get caught up in that. We get carried away with it as we bless him in love. Otherwise, we're the woman at the well to whom Jesus said, you worship that which you do not know. In that kind of worship, in this kind of worship I'm describing, the glory will be beyond anything that we have ever known. Worship in spirit and truth, seeing God for the fullness of who he is, that changes us. If it doesn't change us, then maybe it was a form of worship, but it fell short of worship in spirit and in truth. Real worship is an encounter with the truth of who he is. And so because it changes us, cowards become courageous. Haters like Paul become laid down lovers. Sinners become saints. Thieves become givers. The time is coming, and now is, when there is a difference between those who claim his name but don't know him, and those, on the other hand, who know him in the fullness of all that he is, or who at least hunger after that, and they seek it with all their heart, growing in it. The coming season for the remnant is about entering into a deeper knowing, a deeper experience, a greater realization of who he is, and when that comes, it changes everything. It changes you. Doesn't make any difference to Jesus where you've been as you come into a place of real worship in spirit and truth. You could have been a fornicator, an adulterer, addicted to porn or some other drug, abuser, unloving, self-centered, a jerk, insensitive, or whatever. The revelation of who he really is changes everything. When we've worshiped in spirit and truth, we should leave as changed people for having encountered the living God and having blessed him for his sake. Otherwise, it was nothing more than a concert followed by a motivational speech. Worship is about the revelation of the living God taking root in our hearts, taking root in our spirit, so that we as a people perceive him as he really is in all that he is. His heart rejoices in being truly known, just as you and I, who are created in his image, are touched when we're truly known. So there's a oneness between him and us that transcends physical reality in spirit and truth, the depth of the spirit and the truth of who he is. Increasingly, we're going to see people, listen to me, we're going to see people going where strong leadership is more concerned for the depth of the revelation of Jesus Christ than for pleasing people and putting butts in the seats. Watch for the shift. It's coming. Times of crisis like this one sharpen the hunger, and the hunger is growing. God bless you all, and have a great weekend.